Okay, we good to go?
Yes, sir.
Sweet. Want to go ahead and call the roll?
Yes, Christopher Toth. Here. Keith Alborn.
Here.
Gary Moss. Here. Jeffrey Estes.
Here.
Patrice Parsons. Here. Jordan Scott.
Here.
And David Barrow, he's not here today.
No,
Thank
he's
you.
not. Thank you. Next, I'd like to open citizens' comment. Question, would we want these to be recorded on 3B, or do we want to go ahead and start going through the requests that we have? Looks like most of these are for 3B.
So just for the public's clarification, we have two categories on our agenda tonight. One is where you just want to speak in general, and one I assume most people are here for. The reason it's not working, Rick? I don't know. So citizens' comments is just general comments, if you want to talk in general. Then later on, agenda item, we're going to do minutes, and then we have this item right here, which is a public hearing. So if you want to speak about specifically this item related to the wireless transmission facilities, that's when we'll ask them to come up and speak. So.
Okay, do you have anyone here that wants to speak on something in general that's not related to item 3B? No? Okay. Can I move forward to 3B or 3? Sweet. We'll close citizens' comments. We'll go ahead and move to item 3A, consider an act to approve meeting minutes from the May 29th, 2025 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
I'll make a motion to accept as written. Read it.
All right. Can you call the roll?
Second.
Yes, Christopher Toth.
Yes.
Keith Alborn.
Yes.
Gary Moss.
Yes.
Jeffrey Estes.
Yes.
Patrice Parsons. Yes. Jordan Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item 3B. Conduct a public hearing, consider and act on recommendation to the City Council to amend the City of Bastrop Code of Ordinances, Chapter 13, Utilities, Article 13.14, Wireless Transmission Facilities, Section 13.14.021, to allow wireless transmission facilities in the Employment Center EC place type and move to include on the July 8th, 2025 City Council agenda for the first reading. So I'm going to go ahead and open the, or do you have something to say first?
Go ahead and open the public hearing. I'll do a staff report.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing.
So James Kai, Development Services. So for y'all's information, the public is kind of go over what we're presenting tonight. First, I want to clarify this is an existing ordinance that was adopted back in approximately 2023. We're making some minor modifications to it. So I want to get a good view of the facts. So one, it's an existing ordinance. There's different types of towers out there. The tower in question is a typical monopole, which is right here. Part of this process, you have these contractors, developers, engineers that come out and look for a site that will provide adequate cover for the city. They've been working with us for approximately 2 years. There's an existing tower by HEB off of Hassler that's basically reached its peak. So for general cell services and for 911, et cetera, this is part of an overall communication. As we know, we got less landlines, so it's important, and we understand the concerns of these towers. We'll go into that a little bit. But this is a process, been working with approximately 2 years, trying to find a location that will work for them. So we're talking about a proposed model. These are just an example. So what we have tonight, I want to be sure everybody understands this. We have different, we call zoning districts, which we also call place types. When this ordinance was done back in 2023, you look to the far left, you have what's called a PDD or Planned Development District. You have an employment center. This is the area in question. I'll go into a map in a second. So these are different colored areas on the map I'm going to show them. We identified back then 2 areas that they were permitted. One was P1 nature, no, it's going to be a large open area. We had P2 rural, which also was allowed. And I really want to stress, this isn't approved cell towers across the city. All we're doing is looking at proposing this one area of employment center. I know there's a concern about residential areas, and I'll try to show the map again. But if you see on the far left, you have P3 neighborhood, that's your residentials. P4 mix is kind of a mix of residential and commercial, and P5 core is your more commercial. So the original intent, again, of the ordinance, you see they were allowed in P1 and P2. So I want to stress this ain't allowing cell towers all throughout the city. It's just proposing one more area above what was already allowed. Those areas we looked at were large areas to stay away from residents and setbacks. And so a proposed facility, basically what I just said there, PDDs, P1 nature, P2, would propose to allow them an EC employment center. And this is where I may need help. How do you turn the pointer on again? And can we maybe, I'm trying to zoom in, Rick, if you can zoom in a little bit, and maybe turn the lights off. We'll help a little bit. So currently we have in the existing areas that would be allowed are the rural and nature areas, which are the light pink. Can you zoom back out a little bit, Rick? Is there a way to pull just up the map and make that zoning district go away? Rick? No? So zoom in a little bit. Hey, Nicole, we're not picking up the river area. Is there a reason? Do what? Can you zoom, slide it to the right at all on the map? Go ahead.
Doc, if you please give us some frame of reference too, because the only street I can make out is 71 on there with my
It's
eyesight.
95 coming down into the,
So you have 71 here, and we have a meeting, I try to do a better job of this. You have 71 through the middle here. You should have 95 to the right. See, so again, we'll just slide across, Rick. See, so the big area to the top right is a rural area. Though, based on their existing ordinance, it's allowed there. So we're not changing that. Everything that you see, core, civic space, et cetera, they're still not allowed. If you can slide to the right, Rick, and try to pick up the river, or left, I'm sorry. Will it pick up the river? Will you even get it in there?
No.
So there's some areas, so basically, again, majority of the city is zoned residential uses, the area is not allowed. You look to the top, so see the top gray up there, employment center. So that's up there off of right before we get to the ball fields. So what I'm going to do is really specify the new sites we're looking at. So that's in the process of being a PD for a multi-family unit, commercial, so that's one site. If you slide down, Rick, you have the large area down here to the bottom right, which is the industrial park, correct, Melandra? That's all the industrial park.
Yes, the one that goes down and has that little hook on the left side, that's all the employment center. A little up north, that's Lover's Lane.
So to the left is where it says employment, so the new areas that are in question are labeled employment centers.
So this right here is Pecan.
So that one right there, which is Lover's Lane,
Yes.
and this is the location that one is being proposed. This is the industrial park owned by the city.
And then we have up here is the American Legion
American Legion and
Industrial Park.
Industrial Park.
Yeah. Can you go up on that picture? And then we have, this right here is Tahitian.
Tahitian, there's one little spot in Tahitian.
That's a storage.
So again, we want to clarify the majority of the cities, we're not modifying all these existing residential areas. This is these employment center areas. And the reason we're doing that is back on Lover's Lane is, again, we've been working with this one company for about 2 years. Again, we've denied them based on protecting the residences, based on setbacks, based on et cetera. There was really no place in the city that wouldn't impact residences. To get the elevation and to get a decent coverage, we're requesting to improve employment centers to eventually allow one here, with the understanding one probably won't happen here, one probably won't happen in the industrial park, but again, if it's in an industrial park, the main concern is protecting the residences. You still got the setback from residences. This area is a pretty good setback from residences. They're gonna have to work through some floodplain stuff, and that's really an undevelopable area because of floodplain, but they can build in the floodplain as long as they meet all of our floodplain requirements. So again, that's the key reason why we're asking to modify just to allow those areas. Part of our existing ordinances, we do have a process where when they propose these towers, we have to send letters to everybody within 1,000 feet to make them aware of it. That's a requirement of the applicant. There are setback requirements. They have to comply with FCC requirements as far as the requirements from FCC. And part of the things we have to work through as a city, there's basically a Federal Communication Act that went back from 1996. We can regulate setbacks and zoning. We cannot discriminate providers. And one thing good about technology now, in the old days when the cell towers first came out, every provider had to have a different tower. AT&T had to have one, Verizon had one. For cost, for locations, for city ordinances, this tower will be co-shared by AT&T, Sprint, whoever they lease to, but this tower at this time specifically being built for AT&T for the coverage they're not getting through their one tower downtown by HEB off of Hassler. There's setback requirements again. See what I didn't cover. We covered the locations, state laws. Again, the concern is getting coverage for 911, for fire emergencies. There's a special line for them to have more access there. And again, with new technologies, these towers, yes, they're 5G, but I'm not claiming to be expert, but a lot of them are linked through fiber optic cables. It's not like the old days you had tower to tower. There's a lot of the signal hitting the towers and going back through fiber optic. So supposedly with the new technology, again, I'm not going to claim to be a cell tower expert, the concern with 5G is less than what it used to be. And again, you have the location and setbacks and height that will help with that. So any particular question? Let me see if I covered all the slides.
We have any questions from members? We have a public hearing. You want to get through that first, and then we can take questions after, or are we good?
I have a question.
Now, let's go ahead and get all the information for the public. Now we'll let them ask their questions.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thanks. All right.
So no questions? Okay, go ahead.
It was brought to our attention that we have some residents in Bastrop that have been affected by microwave stuff that comes out of cell towers, et cetera. Do we know what kind of technology is being used? Is that being addressed in any way? I mean, is there any possibility that residents will be harmed from this new technology that's going in?
Again, that goes back to, as a city, through this federal law in '96, cell towers cannot be based on environmental health or radio frequency. And again, that's not a state law, it's federal law. The FCC guidelines will cover that safety aspect of it. So part of them getting approved by the city, we'll ask for approval from FCC for that location too.
Okay. And next question, how close is the nearest resident?
Well, again, we're looking at all these different areas. The proposed location is, if you're familiar with Lover's Lane, when you go down Lover's Lane, several hundred feet at least. And again, we have within the cell tower ordinance, the maximum height of a tower is 120 feet, I believe, quote me word for word, but your setback is going to be twice that distance, so 240 feet. And with understanding the pole proposed will be a typical monopole, 120 feet, and if that pole is 120 feet, from that pole to the property line, you have to be 240 feet away. And again, we can't deny it, but anybody within 1,000 feet of that site will get letters and have the opportunity to voice their concerns with us, with FCC, et cetera.
And I'm sure this is a stupid question, but all safety concerns have been addressed and for the residents?
So tonight, we're looking at the zoning case to allow it. If the commission recommends, so this P&Z is a recommended body of city council. Your recommendation will go to city council on July 8th, next Tuesday. So next Tuesday is city council, based on the outcome of the public hearing tonight, is y'all will recommend something to city council, is, we're going to suggest approval, because we need it for safety, for et cetera. And at P, and if it's approved at the city council for this location to allow that use, they'll come back and work with staff. And the whole ordinance is like 30 or 40 pages. So again, tonight we're looking at the area. They still have to go through all the hoops, the setbacks, floodplain, FCC approval.
Thank you.
We're just trying to approve the future location.
Any more questions? No? Okay, we'll go
Thank
ahead
you.
and start with the public comments. First up, I have Tana Hubinger. She wishes to speak, or he wishes to speak on this item in support. Thank you.
Hello. I'm representing Vincent Girard and Associates. Vince could not be here. He had another hearing tonight. But I just kind of wanted to follow on James and reiterate, like, the pole behind HEB is at capacity. So we've been hired by AT&T and Vertical Bridge to secure another site that's taken over 2 years. And with this search ring, this is the best possible outcome, not being close to residential, and to further help for the safety of 911. So that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you. Next up, we have Deborah Jones.
My name is Deborah Jones. I live at 1606 Pecan Street, and I'm here today as the chairman of the Parks Board. And one of the things that this rezoning is quite unintentionally doing is throwing Mayfest Park into this rezoning request. And so I'm asking that you please exempt Mayfest Park and any city parks from being an employment center zoning. That's a mistake. And I know that the city is addressing that to give the parks their own zoning, but if you would, just for purposes of this hearing, I'm asking that you please exempt Mayfest Park as well as any other city parks.
Thank you for that. Next up, we have a Lucian Thompson.
My name's Lucian Thompson. I live in Wakakawa Drive in Tahitian. Kind of on the same lines as Deborah was just talking about. If any of these get built in anything that is going to be or is now a city park, you will lose a cost share opportunity from Texas Parks and Wildlife and possibly the federal government as well. Any of these structures that go into a city park or any property that may be a city park, we're messing with our own funds. And the fact that we need better cell coverage in downtown Austin, there's absolutely no question. We're losing our visitors to Austin. People won't come back a second or third time because of the very poor cell service we get in downtown Austin. I mean, Bastrop, we still need that. And I think we can get it, but we need to be very careful with these properties that may become a city park in the future, and that includes the entire, everything that's in a floodplain in the city, everything that's in a floodplain in the city, and even in the ETJ, because we can lose that cost share. And I guarantee the cost share, we're the small piece. Parks and Wildlife is the big piece. So we'll lose a lot of money if we do that. So somehow that needs to be worked into that. And I think they already know that, but we'll work on that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay. Next up, we have Bill Bellinghausen.
Good evening. I'm Bill Bellinghausen, 31 Lost Pines, Bastrop, Texas. I'm here to speak on opposition to the cell towers based on the 5G radiation that's put out by the towers. Contrary to popular belief, yeah, we need it, it's gonna work, we'll have autonomous taxis and all that other crap. But let me tell you, when I joined the Navy, they told me nuclear radiation's not a problem. Out in the sun, you get more radiation than you will on your submarine. I spent 5.5 years in a nuclear environment, and as such, I now have a heart disease problem, a blood disorder, and a number of other things based on radiation received during my 5 years, 6 months working with radiation. It's a low dose. The 5G is low dose. It won't show up for probably 10, 15, maybe 20 years. And then you're going to be having all kinds of problems, and you're going to wonder, what the heck happened to me, and where did I get this? The problem is you probably live somewhere near a cell tower or within enough range to get radiated by the radiation. If your cell phone worked, you're being radiated. My concern is you're putting a thing over by school parks, schools, and so forth. You're wiping out the kids. All right? They won't know it for 30 or 40 years. So, yes, the technology is wonderful. Yes, we need 911's accessibility and so forth. But we don't need to kill our future people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up, we have Karen Bellinghausen.
Karen Bellinghausen, 31 Lost Pines Avenue, Bastrop, Texas. I gave the council a copy of this. This states that the radiology connected to the towers is toxic exposure. Now, I mentioned last week that I have had the opportunity to research, and I've pulled up 1,993 articles. This is just one, okay? So you're welcome to any other research that I've got. This particular one that I gave you is from 2018. It discusses in here that this is considered environmental pollution. So I think Bastrop, with its health consciousness, it's counterintuitive for us to have cell towers, especially in your map up there. It showed the employment zone happens to be 300 feet is where you would place one. I got a letter the other day saying that they wanted to place something 300 feet from our property line. So I'm not interested in having that up there. Next to the Lost Pines Paint and Body is where they would be putting it, I believe, but in that general area. So I'm voting against it. I would hope that you would read the article that I submitted to you, and I have others if you need further information. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else that wishes to speak on this item that hasn't signed up? The rest of these are people that don't wish to speak. No? Okay. So next we have Polly Frouchet. She does not wish to speak and wants to record their opposition to this item. Next we have Elda Ford. Walraven. They do not wish to speak and they want to record their opposition. Next is Patrick Spear. Does not wish to speak and they want to record their opposition. Next is the Lily Spear. They do not wish to speak, and they want to record their opposition. Next, we have a property owner response from somebody that is within 300 feet, Robert Long on Lovers Lane. They are in favor of the requested item. Next is another property owner within 300 feet, a Robert K. Long. They wish to show their favor of the request. And then looks like we have two from Robert Long. And then we have another property owner, Betty Warren. They wish to, they have no objection, so they're in favor of the proposed item. And then finally, we have Stacy Lum. They do not wish to speak, but they would want to record their opposition. Okay, last call. Anybody else would like to speak? If not, then we can go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you for everyone that decided to speak tonight.
So,
I have a question.
I'd like to do a follow-up. Yes.
This makes it sound like that there's going to be a tower in every one of these things. All we're talking about doing in this thing is zoning, changing the zonings into certain areas and things like that, just because you're changing that area for employment center. That doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a tower there by any stretch of the imagination. Is that correct?
So let me walk through a couple of things. Now, use y'all who the term buckets and pictures. So I want to clarify a couple of things. Again, this is the chart. So we have existing what we call place types or zoning categories. You see this existing chart, we have planned development, which is already permitted. We're just going to come in for a master development somewhere. We have P1 nature, which is already permitted, and that was again due to large areas. Sure. We have P2 rural, which again, with the intent was to have a large area to get setbacks, to get buffer from residences. Right now, we have no proposal. That's why it's taken 2 years to get to this location. Is this isn't permitted in neighborhoods? We're not proposing to change that. So the majority of the city is zoned where you see the NPs on the far left. The majority of the city is zoned P3 neighborhood, P4 mix, P5 core. Those areas we're not proposing changing. Again, the concerns on being close to schools and but at some point, it depends on where you end up. There is going to be a residence or something may be close to it. So I want to clarify that. All we're saying, we're not changing zoning. We're allowing additional zoning classification or place type, which is the gray area. I'm going to go to in a minute. Part of the discussion, I don't want to clarify. There's a legal process that we have to go through for notification. So this is where we had to put signs out and send letters to everybody within 300 feet. The letters that were sent out that the homeowners and businesses got were just notifying of this change. So everybody that was within 300, we did 300 feet or 500 feet?
3.
We did 3.
We did
so
3 for
I
this
wanted
one.
to clarify that you got a letter because your property was within 300 feet of this gray area. That don't mean a tower is going in, but by law, anybody, because we're doing a zoning change, allowing this use in that zoning category, so the letters that the people got was from the city letting them know that we're proposing this change. Don't mean a tower is going there. Again, at this time, we only really have one location, the one on Lovers Lane is the purpose of tonight. So that's kind of the key points I wanted to cover is all this existing residential is still protected. The letters were received because you're within 300 feet of the property to notify you this change. When they come in for if we approve, City Council eventually approves this, or in these existing areas that are permitted, anybody within 1,000 feet as part of the tower process or permitting process for that tower, anybody within 1,000 feet will get a letter notifying them a tower is going in. But again, I want to repeat that 300-foot notice was just, we're making this change. No, it doesn't mean a tower is going to go in.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It's not, the tower's not putting this change in there.
Yeah. And there'll be, again, I
And
want
what
to
about
stress.
Mayfest Park? I mean,
I'm glad
now
you
these
reminded me
certain
of that.
areas, I'm assuming that there was some research done in these particular areas that you're changing. There's a reason for that. Explain that, if you would.
Well, I'm going to go back to the park deal. So the city's always evolving as we go through these cases. We realize things, as Mrs. Jones touched on, is we did our comp plan. We know there's areas we want to go back. So the comp plan was future land use, and now we're going to go back and start fixing these parks. You have two categories where you designate it as park within zoning, Then there's another category where you designate it as true park space that only city council, not city council, but through an election process, the concern of the city approving these in parks won't happen because it's going to go before the Parks Board, go before city council, and really the park spaces, that was part of the discussion with us, is already, hey, we want to put some on city land, and there wasn't a location that we felt was worth going forward with that could be on city land. So that one's kind of been X'd out already over the past 2 years. There's no place on city property that we would allow one of these towers, just because of the location to residences.
Well, there's already a tower up in that area.
Those are existing ones would stay.
Yeah, two of them, as a matter of fact, isn't there?
And those are grandfathered
Yeah,
in.
there's two of them up there, so the chance of being put one in Mayfest Park is probably pretty low.
Yeah. Again, the deal is to really get addition, somebody touched on additional coverage.
Right.
And not add to the one at Hassler, just get better coverage. For more better coverage and more capacity.
Got some questions on this side?
Yeah, so Mayfest Park is up there, right?
It's that little gray area.
Right over there. And what is it zoned as?
There's a little area that's where, again, as we go through these different processes, we're cleaning up our zone. Our next goal is to clean up zoning maps as we see issues. We would, one, have that if it's not already designated a park, so we had this discussion with Terry, I don't know if Terry's still here. And then we would want to go back, and Viviana's working us to speak, is there's areas along the river as touched on, there's other areas that even the city might not own, we want to designate as park as a city. So you may own 100 acres somewhere that's really floodplain property, we want to designate it as park, but part of the park right now is in EC. It's kind of hard to see because this map's out of scale.
So it's not going there anyway because it's civic space, right?
Well, no, there's some area that the park is under that zoning classification. It's hard to see on
Employment
the,
Center, by 71.
yeah, over by 71.
Okay, but the thought right now is to put it over here by Lover's Lane.
So again, I want to be sure we understand, that's the proposed site.
Right, that's the proposed site.
Right.
So that's what y'all are pushing for.
Well, the problem is we have to allow, we can't just pick that site. We have to allow this zoning/place type to be allowed.
Okay.
So through that, we had to identify everything that was designated as zoning category.
And we can't get to that point until we get past us approving it to move to that step.
Yeah. Knowing that, again, the city's protected through existing residential zoning, that they're not allowed. Knowing that we're working with Parks Board to go back and take care of these areas that are zoned wrong, to zone them to park.
And I can sit up here all day and say how I agree with him 100%, and we don't want to put it in the parks, but that's not our job. Our job is to try to get it to the next step so that you can do what you talked about tonight and to really tell the right people, right? Yeah, there's nothing really we can do tonight. We need to get it to the next step so that they can not put it in a park. That's the important part.
Again, I'm sorry to keep beating this to death. I want to stress, just because you got letters don't mean cell towers are going up there. It's just these categories are what we're changing, so we had to notify everybody within 300 feet this change may be taking place. And again, when a tower officially does come in for a location, anybody within 1,000 feet will get a letter and have the chance to voice their concerns.
Okay, we got a question on the end over there?
Thank you. Two questions, Doc.
Yes, sir.
First question is, based on the concerns of Ms. Jones and Mr. Thompson, clearly, we should respect those, and this should not be in a park. You're saying it would not be in a park. So is there any problem that when we recommend approval to the council, that is subject to it not being in a city park as a caveat? Can we?
So good point. I'm glad you brought that up. So you're a recommending body to council. What I would suggest is whatever action y'all want to take with a recommendation that city council direct staff to go back and look at zoning these parks a different category. So you can make that part of your recommendation is to address the concerns.
And then the second question I have, you touched on this, but just to clarify, that wherever this goes, if the city council approves this, it will be subject to federal regulations to include federal standards for safety. Is that correct?
So yes, the answer is directly yes. So we have a process of a whole ordinance for our towers. Tonight we're just talking about location. We adopted this ordinance for protection 2 years ago that did include this category. Within it are setbacks, all these different requirements. But part of the process by federal law, FCC regulates the health side, that side of it. So part of their submittal process will ask for FCC approval for that site. Again, FCC regulates the health side of it.
Thank you.
I had a couple of questions.
Questions?
Are there alternatives to towers for communications? I mean, like, you know, you've got most Starlink systems out there that are all satellite fed, but you need a tower to communicate with the satellites?
No.
Again, I'm gonna stand up here and not claim to be a communication expert, but think about it is, current technology is all constantly evolving. The problem is the device to connect to that tower. So satellites have come a long way, and please don't hold me as an expert on this. And satellites have come a long way for your internet service. But you'd have to have an internet, not an internet, what's the term for the mobile phone where you use satellite phone to connect to the satellite? So with the numbers of phones out there, you'd have to come out with all brand new phones to be able to hit a satellite. We had landlines first, we had party lines first, so that now we've gone to fiber optics. Just with everybody using cell phones or mobile phones, that's the current technology. Now, maybe 20 years from now, everything's going to be hitting a satellite and cell towers will go away. I mean, you used to see poles going up every 500 feet. Technology's come a long way where you can space them farther apart. Technology's come where you got fiber, even though it's a 5G system, part of the 5G system is done through the fiber lines. When I ask people, I got a 5G cell, but my signal's no better. Well, it's because they had old lines going from tower to tower. So a lot of technology is through the fiber optics, the better antennas, the better receivers. I mean, technology's come a long way, and I'm hoping, again, with technology, again, FCC regulates that, some of the health concerns have been addressed.
Is Bob Bryan Park in consideration?
No.
I didn't think so.
Yeah. There's not going to be a tower. I mean, pretty well safely, and council can contradict it, but one's not going to go in a park anywhere in Bastrop. And we're going to officially clean that up to be sure about that. And again, y'all can make a recommendation, proposal to council that areas that are parks, be sure they're designated as park space.
Doc, the
Any
best way to
questions?
understand this is like the land use map, right? Same
Right.
theory. It's not, they're going to put a tower there. This is how we did the land use.
Yeah, but versus a land use map, this is concrete, like
Not necessarily.
acceptance.
It's a zoning change.
This
They're
is
not
the
going to put
zoning.
anything there that has to go through the process of doing that.
Which is my question. If we make this zoning change, besides cell towers, what else can go there? What else are we opening it up for in terms of future
So
planning?
the ordinance before you deny it is the WTF, or wireless transmission facility, specific just to this. Again, that goes back to that table. So every city has different ordinance, tree ordinances, zoning ordinance, parking ordinance. This is an ordinance all by itself, written back in 23, just for wireless transmission towers.
Okay, so that's
And
what
then- And again, this is just for these facilities. This doesn't allow anything else but the poles. Again, we have a whole ordinance on setbacks, on notification. This is just related to towers, nothing else. You can't
Okay.
have,
All right, Doc, you got to help me. What is it specifically that we're voting on? Are we voting on creating an employment center?
so here, look at this chart real quick together.
Right.
So again, for clarification, on the zoning district, which we call place types.
Yep.
We have uses within those place types.
Yep.
Those are existing place types. So this refers, again, for the public, this refers back to the map. That's our
Got it.
existing zoning map.
Okay, so we already have an economic center as a place
So
type.
all those are existing place types.
got
And all
it.
we're proposing now is, and really I don't know why we missed it because of the rural areas they're in, and employment center is more of an industrial type use. That's why the industrial parks zone that. Is all we're saying now, again, we'll stress, we're not modifying across the whole city. All we're doing is adding one more category of employment center to
Got it.
allow.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions currently? Okay,
Thank you.
so really quick, I have a couple questions for you really quick. Or just main questions. So since I've been on this board, we've had a number of zoning and just code adjustments that we deemed important that we needed to address immediately, right? And most of those adjustments came from, hey, parking, we need to set a number for parking, hey, minimum lot size, things that we identified as threats essentially to our city, right? From just what I'm hearing, there are concerns from people that are reasonable, right? They don't want stuff in our parks. They don't want these towers in the parks, even though there are a couple that have them already. My question is, what necessitates a zoning change when it's only one specific property that needs a tower, when that property can get that tower done with a PDD, right? That would eliminate all concern from anybody that has with these towers spreading across town where, I mean, employment center, we're talking 2 or 3 or 4 different properties, but they're in pretty dominant spots in town. You know, the north side of town, we have Mayfest, right? Why not ask the property owners just to apply for a PDD instead of having to go through this whole zoning change, which essentially allows these towers to indefinitely exist in these spaces?
So again, as you permitted, normally a PDD is a master development where you're doing a mixed use, doing that over. Staff really felt allowing them, since we already allowed them in these 2 other rural type areas, I hear what you're saying, is we thought this would be the best way to go forward because it's not really a PDD, it's just a cell tower by itself.
Of course.
And the point being with a PDD, Sendero, for example, is a PDD. If they have a large area and a 1,000-acre site and they want to put a site to put off a cell tower in it, that's where you would normally be part of a PD, but you really wouldn't do a PDD just for a cell tower by itself.
Okay, so what are our other options here? Because I know it's not just a zoning change. Can they apply for a variance instead of us having to go through an entire code change?
The problem is a variance is based on a hardship. So again, variance is for where there's an existing ordinance allowed already. So the argument on this is what would be, normally as a variance, you want to substitute materials. You want to modify a setback. You don't want to comply with a certain code. So it's really hard to do a variance and prove a hardship on a zoning case. It would be more of a zoning change or a change of what's allowed in that zoning.
Okay, so yeah, I guess that's a great point. Why would the property owners not apply for a zoning change to go back to
and again, a good
P2?
visual on that would be is
because this is a rural property. It's a large property, is it not?
well, everybody that's zoned that district, there's multiple, I believe, multiple property owners. Anybody that was in that district would have to submit the zoning change. So if there's 10 different property owners, we wouldn't want to do a spot zoning of just that one lot.
Yeah.
Everything within the area would need to come before us for a zoning change.
So in the proposed spot, do you know about how many properties are in that particular zone?
Probably 2 or 3 property owners in that spot where they're proposing it. On Lover's Lane?
Yeah, because we're talking, and if we can
At
be
least 3 or
specific,
4.
the spot that they're going for is on the corner of Lover's Lane and 71, the western corner, correct?
So you go down Lover's Lane on the west side of Lover's Lane.
Yeah, west side.
West side of Lover's Lane.
Yeah, so as you're driving in on Lover's Lane on the right-hand side, correct? Yeah.
Where's right in? Right there. Right there. Yeah.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is it just seems like we're doing a blanket zoning, like a zoning change for all of the employment center zonings when it's just affecting one property. And it's not like from what you're saying, they're not putting in multiple towers in different locations, nor do they intend to, correct?
In this particular case, no, just this one.
Okay. What I'm saying is when we do a zoning change, now we're opening up the opportunity for those towers to go in other places, and it's a Pandora's box at that point for all the employment center properties.
As long as we understand we're only talking about, I hear and don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
With understanding we're only talking about these 5 different locations, again, that's why we didn't do a proposal zoning changing. No, the one lot out there by the Public Works Yard is going to be a PDD. No one in our industrial park wouldn't be. So
Yeah.
that's really how we came about this, knowing these other areas would never have a cell tower built on it because they're fixing to be something different.
Okay. So
And again,
there's
through
no
that-
other options for this property. This property, the only way it's going to get a cell tower built on it is if we go through a zoning update or change.
So again, I want
In
to
the
clarify the language. We're not doing a zoning change. We're modifying the
excuse me,
zoning ordinance. No
the
problem.
ordinance.
The zoning category won't change. We're just saying we're going to allow that use within
Yeah,
that
of course.
category.
Okay, so the only opportunity they have to put a tower on this property is to go through an ordinance change for this particular zone.
To allow
They don't
that.
have there's no other options available.
this was the best option. There's always other options.
What are the other options that we have available?
If you go to PDD, it would be spot zoning. If you went through a zoning change, everybody would have to be
Yeah.
involved. Staff felt this was the best solution.
Jordan.
I thought the whole point of PDDs were for properties that had specific needs that didn't fit the area that it's in, or the specific,
They were more for, again, a PDD is really a
Yeah.
master development where you have mixed uses of apartments, you have residential.
of course.
Not usually for just a cell tower, one spot located.
Well, we haven't had use a PDD for a cell tower because we haven't had the opportunity to. So that's why I'm curious. I mean, am I wrong in this way of thinking?
If I may, first of all, this isn't a need of a property owner, this is the need of the community to have adequate cell service, whether it's for 911 or in terms of what we've already heard, HEB, the one at HEB is overwhelmed right now. So it's not only 911. It's has to do with this city's economic viability, and I think Doc touched on that. People need to be able to get good cell coverage. So this is really about the needs of the community. But Doc, the point, one of the points I got from you, which I think can help clarify this, is that although a particular site may be being focused on, one of the reasons we have a need to make this for employment centers writ large is so there's some flexibility in finding a site if the first one doesn't work out. Is that okay? Do I understand that correctly?
Really, I would go more in depth than that. Let me find the art language. Go backwards.
I think you're concentrating on one tower, and that's not what this is about.
Right.
It's just the one tower.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I
Well-
mean, this is a zoning change for certain areas and things like that, and just adding it to it. So I don't know why you're getting hung up on one spot, because it has nothing really to do with that.
And again, I want to clarify again how staff came about this, is we had these existing districts that are permitted. So you see the PDD, it's again a water tower or cell tower within the master development. You have the P1 nature, which is a big rural area. You have the P2 rural, which is again was a large area. Again, I want to clarify, we're not allowing them in residential neighborhoods, which is the majority of the city. We just felt this employment center, knowing this particular site ended up in that, but they may go to a lot across the street. There may be, we just felt that was the best way to allow this use in that category, because it's more of an industrial use. It's not a, yes, you may have existing residences there, you may have residences close, but that's not a residential area.
So the reason why it was extended to the whole employment center was because the areas that are employment center currently are either that area, the industrial park, or areas that are already going, either already have something industrial type or are planning on doing some kind of development that are already in the works with the city. So essentially,
This is simply just adding a new category.
like.
That's it. Now, what happens from that point, is determined by the land use, the use they need, and things like that. You're focusing on putting one tower, and this changes everything. It does not. It's land use.
Yeah, but
That's all we're doing here.
I'm not pushing back on the idea of putting in a tower. I'm pushing back on the idea of now we're allowing multiple towers to be placed in different properties, when in reality, we could just, if we don't want them on the rural properties, which is where it seems like to me it makes sense they belong.
That's not what they're doing.
They
in this
could,
situation.
they could apply for a PDD and get a tower on a specific property without affecting Mayfest or.
So you want to
wherever
add
else.
an element to the development.
Well,
Are you
what
going to
else
do
are
that
they?
for every tower or every piece of property?
How many
in
towers
town?
do you want to put
No,
in?
you're gonna-
You
it's
know?
going to
That's
create
what I
chaos.
that's what
why
I
you
want to
set the
know.
zones up.
Well, that's
Am I
my
missing something here?
my train of thought is, if it's just one tower, right, and it only
Get off the
affects
one
this
tower.
one
That's not what
property.
this is about. That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
It's not just about one tower.
so there's going to be multiple towers.
There's multiple locations, the possibility of it. Doesn't mean
Of
one's
course.
going up there.
And like I said, I'm not against putting in any tower, right?
Well, you want towers
If
to be
you-
in like
oh,
an
okay.
employment center
If-
rather than P3, P4, or any residential area.
But if we approve this change to the ordinance, now you can put a tower on every single property if you want.
Not necessarily.
Yes, you could. There's no limit.
Again, if you don't mind, I want to clarify that is, that's zoned P1 nature, zone P2 rural existing. 'Cause
Yes.
the public's here, and they can put towers anywhere, you can't. All we're proposing is P1 nature is existing,
okay.
P2 rural, and then the specific area of employment center, knowing that here in the very near future, the only spot that's going to be left that's going to be really zoned employment center is the Lovers Lane area.
Yes, sir, and I completely understand and I don't want anyone to twist my words or misunderstand what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, when we're changing an ordinance for a zoning type, you're granting access for every property within that zoning to put in a tower. So regardless if you guys say, well, this property is going to be this type of development, it's not yet, right? They can always change their plans and say, oh, wow, we can allow this. Here's an extra source of income. Now we can have towers everywhere. Because at the end of the day, if I'm a property owner, I'm not putting a tower on my property for the benefit of the community. I'm putting a tower on my property because I'm going to get a paycheck from the telecommunication companies to lease it. That's why. It's the same as an oil rig. It's the same as selling your mineral rights. It's the same stuff, right? So what I'm saying is, if we do an ordinance change for this place type, all the employment center properties can put a tower, in theory, on their property. Yes or no?
If they meet all the requirements of the communication.
Yes. So what I'm saying is, if we want to put a tower on this property, let's do it. I'm for putting towers on people's properties if it makes sense, right? Let's apply for a PDD. You can always update the PDD in the future if they decide to put other stuff in it. Can you not? You can make updates or changes to PDDs if they decide to build around it or build other stuff?
So the PDD will be specific to that property.
Yeah.
And if they need to change anything, the PD would have to come back before P&Z and council.
Okay, I don't see what the issue with that is,
Well,
right?
let me ask one question. I'm sorry, Jeremy.
Go ahead.
Let me ask one question. Be sure I understand. I understand you're asking for this change to this particular place type.
Mhm.
But what I'm also hearing you say is the other properties that are in this particular place type already have other things going there. Is that correct?
Again, that's why, I go back to the question of this area, why we just decided to do based on classification, is that pretty well all the other properties will no longer be this place type of employment center.
Okay.
Other than the industrial park, which is, and that's what we looked at it from the land use, and this is a land use question.
Right.
And I agree with what you're saying, Mr. Scott, is you want to be specific with a PDD.
Right, for this particular.
Staff looked at land use in general based on its zoning classification. The industrial park is an industrial park. Is there anything wrong with a cell tower there? To answer your question, the one up by the Public Works Yard along 95 is going to become a PDD for a multi-commercial.
Right.
Really only two sites when we get through at the end of the day to answer your question will be the industrial park and this Lovers Lane property. Everything else will be some other zoning classification, and we're going to address the park concerns.
Right, so does that handle your concerns?
I mean, I
understand why you're asking.
I completely understand what we're doing here. I understand this is an ordinance change. What I'm saying is, when you do an ordinance change, you grant access for cell tower, in this specific example, for every single property within that zone. So that means each property could put a tower on its property as long as it meets setback requirements, all that good stuff, if they wanted to, right? Why? I just don't understand why this is a zoning or ordinance change when this could be accomplished with a PDD because it's for a specific property, right?
Because the idea of the zoning of the employment center was meant to be an industrial use, essentially an employment center. It's supposed to be more of a factory type, industrial, it's where the wireless towers make sense.
Okay, so I guess the question to my peers are we in agreement that cell towers belong in employment center zonings? Yes or no?
And let's good comment, Alondra. That's again how staff got here. Again, they're not allowed in residential. We looked at the employment center. It can be substantial. You have some uses of employment center. What's allowed in there, real quick? Can you pull that up? Or give me an example.
It's everything that's allowed in the EC, but it's meant to be more of a, so the actual definition is areas that by their function, deposition, or configuration cannot or should not conform to one or more of the place types. EC shall be used for job creation centers and building forms that do not fit within the character of the place types.
So again, it was more being, that's why the industrial park is zoned industrial. And again, I hear your concerns, not disagreeing with you. This area is pretty well undeveloped because of the floodplain. So that's another reason, instead of just doing one spot, this is an industrial zone area through the employment center, and it's an area that's floodplain. It's really prohibited on future residential development.
And I think there's if I may, I think there's a practical consideration here too. I understand the chair's concern that towers may pop up in all these employment centers, but functionally that's not going to happen. The towers have a certain geographic range, and I really do appreciate your concern, but the way they work, I don't see them popping up on all the other employment centers, at least right now. And as it stands right now, was it P4 and P5? Or is it let me get
P1 and P2 rural.
here. Right, P1 and P2, there's already carte blanche to put towers up there as well. So we don't see towers popping up on all the P1 and P2 sites as it stands right now.
And
I
again,
think this is just giving the city an option to get this done to address a very, very pressing need that also has public safety considerations, but also has economic viability considerations, because there is a problem with cell coverage in the downtown Bastrop area. I live down there, and there are gaps in coverage, or it's hard to get access sometimes. And that's going to affect the economic, I'd say it again, the economic viability of Bastrop. So I don't see a crisis here in terms of tomorrow that every employment center is going to have a tower pop up into it. I think that the motive here is to allow the city some flexibility. I think the staff have researched this, and they've come up with the best option under the circumstances. And I'm ready to make a motion depending on the concerns of my peers.
May I just one quick thing, as part of the process, again, I hear your concerns, Chairperson, is the P1 and P2, they're permitted right now. There's areas where in P1 and P2, as you mentioned, they're straight out permitted that would be more offensive to residential properties in this particular area. Again, that's where staff made a decision to allow this use in this category, because there's existing places in P1, P2 that would affect neighbors more than the employment center districts, if that makes sense.
And we're just talking, and I know this isn't what we're voting on tonight, but we're only looking at one tower, right?
Well,
Right
again,
now,
I want to stress to the public commission is this, when you change this employment center to allow them, again, to Mr. Scott's comment, anything within those employment center districts will be permitted to be put there if they comply with the ordinance. But right now, we only have one proposed.
And it's been going on for 2 years.
2 years.
One tower.
And again, I don't claim to be expert. Technology has changed. In the old days, you had every provider putting up separate towers. They'll co-mingle on this one location. Instead of having AT&T and 4 other towers, they now co-mingle on one tower.
Is it possible when we start looking at, other changes to the land use map, when we start moving forward and doing all our stuff there, that we can address these concerns with the other employment center planned zones? I mean, we could basically say, then we can say, this is what's going to go there. And
so we created a land use map
Yep.
that gives a broad picture based
Yep.
on all the input over the past several years. That land use map is tools to change future zoning to what we need to change it to.
I got it.
As most of the stuff that's going to be, again, a lot of these areas are going to be changed to meet the land use. The question, what would you ever change this area to based on?
I'm not talking about this area. I'm talking about the other areas that are zoned employment centers where they could
We'd have to
potentially-
work, the
could work
landowner
through
has
that
requested, exactly.
Okay.
Just like we're going to fix the park at staff level.
Right. So do you advise this commission to state something specific about parks when we're talking about this tonight?
Just if you'll make a recommendation or approval, just add a stipulation that's to city council, that asks city council to pursue us, address the concerns with parks by
Can we just exempt city property from the ordinance?
The problem is you can't really exempt city. I would just make it a recommendation to change it because it's really a use by zoning category. You can make that recommendation and staff can work that P and Z, but we all know we need to fix, to your point, we know we at staff level through either zoning changes, which we own the property, we can request that zoning change, and through designating that property as park land, there's no question we're going to fix that to prohibit towers in city property and city parks.
Okay.
Or specifically city parks.
Would that address your concerns?
No, I mean, like I said,
I understand what you're asking, I'm just saying that, I mean, because that was one of my concerns originally, was if we change this, what else could go there?
yeah, well, because as it stands, especially like with the concern with Mayfest, it's employment center, and who knows how long it's going to be before we rezone that, you know? I don't see the city putting in a cell tower there, but if we approve the ordinance as it stands, they could. And
Yeah, but if it's a floodplain zone, we got a problem with stuff being developed there anyway.
yeah, of course. I mean, Mayfest isn't in a floodplain, last time I checked, is it? No?
No, again, staff suggestion would be just add to your, whatever process you'll go, if you go forward on recommend approval, that approval to recommendation to council, that staff come back and look at modifying city property that's zoned this category to a different category, the correct category, other than employment center.
Okay.
One question, with the perceived growth of Bastrop in the next 5 to 10 years, how many towers do you see coming?
Again,
Loaded question.
I don't claim to be a cell tower expert, but as y'all touch, technology's come a long way where you can space them more. You can co-mingle on them. Fiber optics line have helped. That was part of the issues in the old land with your old trunk lines and stuff. You couldn't push that through the cell tower because you still depend on that landline and move that final connection. So with technology of fiber optics, with cell tower, spacing is not like it used to have to be. I can't answer it directly because I'm the expert, but
You don't know,
You mean you can't look into a crystal ball and tell us?
can't tell us, huh?
yeah. But you can use what we have existing. You see they're spacing these out. They're not trying to put one Hassler next to the existing tower. They've got to space them out to get the coverage. And technologies between fiber optics line and the ground and cell tower technology has reduced the needs for multiple towers. I'll say it that way.
I can tell you from experience, being in the fiber optics industry and the microwave industry my whole life, there's not a big need here in Bastrop other than the one that they're putting in. So having
Yeah.
more in this area that they're talking about, there will not be a need.
Oh, I mean, I absolutely see the need. I grew up in Tahitian. My parents lived there. The cell service there is absolutely horrible.
They can fix it with this one tower. So
Yeah.
I think you're trying to make a whole much out of the same.
No, like I
It's-
said, I'm not against the tower being put in. What I'm saying is when you make a change to a zoning ordinance, you affect all the properties within that zone.
Yep, and they,
Like
you know,
that's,
all they're doing is
but there's other
identifying
properties that aren't
the
in Tahitian
possibilities
area.
of something going there. That's it. That's
There's
all they're
other
identifying.
properties that are zone employment center that aren't in that Tahitian area.
Yep.
So
And
this isn't about the cell tower. This is about the zoning ordinance.
That's correct.
So if they want to put a cell tower in that property, what I'm saying is why not do they just not apply for a PDD? Because it makes sense. It's a community need. We want it there. It makes sense, but we don't want to affect every property that's EC in Bastrop. Right? Am I crazy here?
Yep.
Is that a crazy
Afraid you are.
solution?
Not completely crazy, but close to it. Here's the big point. I look at this thing like the land use map, okay? We have that for a particular reason, and you understand the reason for that, is this is where it's recommended would
Yes.
be the best use of the property.
Yes.
That's all this is. That's all they're doing with this, and that's all they're going to do with this. So you throwing in the single tower on this thing confuses the whole issue because of the fact that just because there's a possibility doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen that way.
But the thing is, we're asking for ordinance change for a single tower.
No, they're not. That's incorrect.
Is
This
that
is not about one single tower.
So are
Is it
they
not?
looking at multiple different properties in question,
No.
right? Is there multiple properties being questioned, or is it one particular property and one tower
So
driving
this
this?
change came about for this particular
One
tower.
property, one tower, correct?
But again,
So it is.
other people.
No, it's not.
But again, we looked at it again, if we don't mind, yes, there's only one tower, but we process this as a land use, not that one tower. And I think that's what you're trying to say, Mr. Moore. Yeah, at this time, there's only one tower, but as staff, we looked at land use, not the tower.
Right. So that's what we're doing, is we're looking at that. Just
Of
because
course,
there's a
but-
tower going there,
and
it's not got anything to do.
I'm not
with the use of-
disagreeing with anybody that this area by Tahitian, the industrial park are bad places. I'm not saying they're bad places for a tower. The problem is you're roping in that northern property that's EC, and you're roping in Mayfest. That's the issue that I have. Mayfest, why are we opening the gate
Well,
for a tower
if we
being
make
put
a
there?
motion with an exemption for the parks, Mayfest is fine.
Is
And
that
that's-
correct?
That's the motion I'm prepared to make.
Okay.
I think we understand everybody's concerns. I think one of the issues, though, I go back to, is we need a tower. A site has been provisionally identified, but the city needs the flexibility to put that tower somewhere else, potentially, if things don't work out with the first site. And I think that's part of what the thinking is here, if I'm correct.
You're incorrect.
I'm incorrect. How am I and I may be, but please.
You're talking about in case it doesn't work out. Trust me, in this situation,
Yeah.
they have identified this
Okay.
location as the location, the best location. It's not that they're going to be popping up here, well, that didn't work, so we're going to put one over here. These things cost a lot of money, and they do a lot of due diligence to make absolutely sure. Young lady, come up here. Come up here.
And you're also correct, like, it's gonna depend on geographically, like, you can't have them too close together, so it's not gonna be an issue of them constantly popping up.
Right.
As well as there can be rooftop opportunities, but this is AT&T that has come to us personally, and has said for 2 years, what's the best possibility? And he sounds like he's the fiber optics guy.
All right.
I understand
But
it completely.
essentially, it's just this one site that's been working for 2 years, it's rural, it's not near any residential, and this is the best option for downtown Bastrop.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Gary.
Yeah, and I
clarifying
hope that they put a tower there. Like I said, the cell service in Tahitian is horrible, and that area is horrible. But why are we changing an ordinance when a simple PDD could fix this because it applies to that particular property?
Because a PDD just adds another layer to the situation.
It's what a PDD is designed for.
It's not designed for it. Those are exceptions, not the rule.
This
And so
would
if
be
you
an
have set up
exception.
rules where you can put things, just like P1, P2, P3,
Sure.
P5, everything else
And-
with the land use map, then that's what
it-
then you go into that area and say, okay, will this work? Oh, no, it will not work. So they don't do it. But if it will, they
Yeah.
will do it. And that's the point.
Great, and
If
it's
you
gonna
don't have
work on
the
this property.
areas laid out to do this, how are you going to know?
And essentially, this property wants an exception, but instead of applying for a PDD, which is just an agreement with the city to allow certain types of developments with exchanges or whatever, there's always stuff that they put in these things. They're trying to change an
They're asking for an
ordinance.
exception.
Yeah, well, it won't be an exception when it's
It just-
approved
this-
at the change
this
in the
came about
ordinance,
because of
right?
the fact of this tower, and they're taking an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. And so they're looking at this that way, and then they're adding all this into the city.
I'm
at the same
I'm getting
time.
mixed
You're
messages
just-
here
You're tying it all
because
together, it's not.
Doc.
we're being told that it's
Yeah.
not multiple towers, but then it is multiple towers? Because it's not multiple towers, of course, right? Then why does this necessitate an ordinance change? Why not just do a PDD or for that specific property?
So,
for that
Doc,
tower?
what's the answer to that question? Why not do a PDD?
Yeah, he said it.
Because again, staff looked at it as place type / zone category. We had existing P1, P2, which are more residential than, to us, again, employment centered industrial park. To me, the original ordinance should have had this area allowed, to allow some flexibility. And I guess you can argue here at PDD, but a PDD is for us, again, I'm not disagreeing with what
Yeah.
Mr. Scott's saying, but again, we looked at a broad land use of that general area. If they can make a deal with landowner one, or maybe landowner two, again, we looked at it as a broad land use, not just one tower. No, does that help? Yeah, we looked at the zoning existing.
We did do the PDD. this really wouldn't even be before us.
It would, you'd have to come back
I mean,
for-
we just have to come and say, we're going to do this, what do y'all
So,
think? And we'd
well,
say,
let
no
me-
problem.
Well, I'm
Right.
going to clarify the PDD. We looked at land use, as Alondra touched on. This is the industrial park. This is
Right.
really an industrial area. It's not really classified, but employment is a higher industrial use than these P1 nature and P2 rural. And again,
Right.
we looked at P1, P2, you can do them, but you can't do it in an industrial area. This area is a PDD, would be a zoning change that we'd go through as a zoning process for that particular lot, whether it's Sendero as a multi-family, multi-commercial development, or a one lot just for a cell tower PDD.
Okay, Jordan, that other property that we were talking about, which is closer, what, to HEB, is that right? What if we exempt that from this ordinance change as well? It basically just limits this ordinance to this one piece of property if we do that. Can we not do that?
No, because we're looking at place types / zoning categories.
Right,
What's before here tonight is these are existing districts.
right,
Within this existing district of employment center, you would have to approve all or
Employment
none
center, okay.
employment center.
got it.
Mr. Chair, if I may say, the staff has put some thought into this. I think they've come up with the best solution. This has evidently been lingering for 2 years. I think we have all expressed our concerns one way or the other. I would like to make a motion. If the motion's rejected, then we can ask the staff, we can make a motion for the staff to go back and consider a PDD. But I think it's worth going forward and seeing what the commission thinks in terms of recommending approval. And I'm prepared to make that motion with your permission.
Of course.
All right. I move that we recommend approval to the City of Bastrop Code of Ordinances, Chapter 13, Utilities, Article 1314, Wireless Transmission Facilities, as written in Section 13.14.02 to allow wireless transmission facilities in the employment center, place type, and move, to include an exemption for parks and recreation properties.
I'll second that.
Okay. Could you call the roll?
Christopher Toth,
Yes.
Keith Elborn,
Yes.
Gary Moss,
Yes.
Jeffrey Estes.
Yes.
Patrice Parsons.
Yes.
Jordan Scott.
No.
Thank you.
So again, it passes, again, for clarification, the P and Z Commission is a recommending body to City Council. This to go to City Council on July 8th for basically the same process with
Yeah.
y'all's recommendations.
Yeah, of course.
Just want to make sure the public understood.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on to item 3C. Consider an act to approve the Colony Mud 1F Section 6 preliminary plat being 22.605 acres out of the Jose Manuel Bank Survey. Abstract number 5, located north of Sam Houston Drive, within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of Bastrop, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A.
Thank you, Commission. So again, kind of an overview. Everybody, I think, is familiar with the Colony. The Colony is a MUD. For the public's information, a MUD is a municipal utility district. This is kind of a master development. What's before the Commission tonight is a Section 6, which is a preliminary plat. And then after preliminary plat, you have a final plat. So this is at the preliminary stage. This is for Section 6 of this area. The area in question is, so this is the overall view, and everybody knows how big the Colony is. This portion, there was a question, and correct me if I'm right, Alondra, it's right up in this general area right here. Oh, she left. It's in this general area right here. So it's hard to get to, and you can't quite get there. The first step is preliminary plat. Then they'll come back with the final plat, and they've got to put plans together. So it's kind of a timing. You can't get to this one yet because the phases before it haven't been built out yet. There's the general area of the property. This is what they're proposing for that particular section. Again, it's a phase 6 of an existing municipal utility district. And then that one we recommend approval, understanding it's just a preliminary at this stage. It'll come back to you for a final plat. Any questions?
Any questions?
No question.
I have a question. Are they looking at becoming part of the city, or are they already? They're not part of the
So
city.
again, for clarification for the city citizens, the city has what's called an exterritorial jurisdiction.
Right, right.
As the ETJ, the
Got
short
it.
term for that. We oversee platting in those areas.
I got it.
So
Okay,
this has
thank
to come
you.
for you
Thank you.
platting. It's
Sorry,
part
that was
of
a
a
stupid
MUD,
question.
again, the utilities are provided by the MUD, Municipal Utility District. At some point, as the MUD is paid off, there's opportunity for those properties coming to the city, but that's down the road once the MUDs are paid off.
I withdraw my stupid question.
No, it's
Thank
not never a stupid question. Clarification is great.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Colony Mud 1F Section 6 preliminary plat being 22.605 acres out of the Jose Manuel Bangs Survey, abstract number 5, located north of Sam Houston Drive, within the ETJ of Bastrop, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A.
I'll second that motion.
Can we call the roll?
Christopher Toth,
Yes.
Keith Alborn,
Yes.
Gary Moss,
Yep.
Jeffrey Estes,
Yes.
Patrice Parsons,
you. Yes.
Jordan Scott.
Yes. Cool. Let's move on to updates, starting with 4A, future development-related items.
So the future development rate item is number one is going to be our new staff member, Brittany. She's going to say a little bit
Take 'em
about So Brittany is our new city planner. So again, I'm kind of giving an overview in this development itself. I'm excited about, we're fully staffed. I'm in the role of development director, building official. We have Alondra and Nicole, who are frontline people who've been here for a while. Y'all know her. Brittany's coming to us as our senior planner. We've got 3 full-time city inspectors now, and one is who's existing. He's doing a good job. He's instilled some training, and got 2 new young people. And then we have our 3 development techs. So we're finally fully staffed where we can, again, we do everything in-house. We're here to help the public. Anytime phone calls, come see us. I mean, again, thanks for showing up tonight, but we want a good community interaction. So you want to say a little bit real quick about yourself, Brittany? Please? Real quick, 1 minute. I asked for 2 minutes, you said 1 minute.
Is it on? Yes. Yeah, my name is Brittany Epling. I'm originally from Phoenix, Arizona, but I just moved here to Bastrop, Texas this June 1st. So happy to be here. I've worked in planning and zoning in another state for the last few years. So just excited to join the city, and thank you all for welcoming me.
Absolutely. Welcome on.
Congratulations.
That's all I had on that one. That's okay.
Okay.
Next one.
Sweet. Next, we have Development Services Department Monthly Project Volume Report.
So I know these are always hard to read. I'm going to again go down the far right, then I can touch on the big ones. I think our biggest one still is, I'm going to try to give you the single family, because where's the single family? So new single family is about halfway down on the right, is 74, which is a lot of those, again, knowing the different areas and understanding how development works. Is Val Verde right now is our only major subdivision to build houses in. So majority of that's in Val Verde. We have the onesies and twosies across the city, but the majority of that is Val Verde. So if anybody's not driven through Val Verde, you can see the volume that's going up out there. The key I'm just going to touch on is the bottom. So that's the big activity on single family. At the bottom, you have a kind of an overview of the key ones. Within Val Verde, at the rear of the property, they're doing an amenity center. A little mom and pop here, if you're familiar with the little house along College Street, which is on the south side. There's 3 houses, or 3 different buildings there. One stay in a residence. This is a little building that's going to be an admiring your wellness. It's like a spa type mom and pop. They have an existing business downtown. Ellis Electric is in our industrial park. You're familiar with them. They're the one that we're growing. Within that existing building, they're doing a monitoring office. Enterprise Rent-A-Car, which is on here twice, is doing a remodel, upgrading the building. Community Care Pediatrician is that little 2-story building right there on the corner. They're a community organized. They help people through health services. I don't know if you're familiar with the site at 301 State Highway 71. They've taken the lease space next to them, and they're basically doubling in size to provide more service to the community for health cares. And then everybody's excited, we're again in front of Lowe's, that's called Sendero West. At Lowe's, if you haven't been to Chipotle's yet, we got Chipotle's, which is open already, that new strip center. We have Jeremiah's Ice, which is going to be an ice cream shop. When I get through here, I'm going to go try to get them a final inspection, so that should be open. And they have to, after they get their CO, go through corporate requirements, inspection, get operable, but that's going in. And the reason I'm bringing that up, to the right of that, again, in that strip center where Chipotle is, Palm Beach Tan is going in.
Palm Beach what?
Tan.
Tan.
So you can get your tan.
That's in Burleson Crossing, not Sendero. Burleson
I
Crossing.
said Burleson
Oh,
Crossing,
Burleson,
sorry.
okay.
Thank you. So it's again, the strip center
Important to
consists
know.
Chipotle, Jeremiah, and Palm Beach. Yeah,
I keep
they're
seeing
close.
ads online, do you? I've seen the ad a million times.
And then again, the Londa, if you don't mind, I'll let Londa touch on over on the second page is, did I miss it? It was on the first one. On the far right, we have the planning is, again, different plats. Y'all been involved with plat exemption, a lot of activity. The biggest one, just for FYI, we had a Good Soul Brewing that's going to be proposed. Can you help me, Alondra?
In the industrial park across the street from Ellis Electric.
So they was just verifying that use would be allowed in that area? Is what they were-
Yeah, I believe right now they're.
What's it going to be?
Good Soul Brewing Company.
Oh, it's a brewery.
So they're just verifying that use is allowed in that area, and they
Awesome.
haven't come for us for actual permits yet. Any questions?
Yeah, Doc, any updates on any other major stores coming in, Burleson East, was it Burleson East and Sendero?
So let me just kind of give a general overview and this is kind of a report on what was permitted in this time period, to answer your question. Burleson Crossing West is Lowe's. The development to the east of that is Burleson Crossing West, same developer. In Burleson Crossing West, going back, you have the new strip center where Chipotle's existing,
Right.
Jeremiah's fixing to open in Palm Beach. You go across the street to Burleson Crossing East, that's where the west and east came from.
Sure.
Same developer, we've approved a 30,000 square foot shell building. Within that shell building, we've already approved an Aspen Dental. You kind of go farther in development and backs up to the apartments, what they call Settlement Drive. We've permitted already, help me, what's the grocery store? Sprouts, thank you. Sorry, it's late. Sprouts is already permitted. They're under construction. To the right of Sprouts is Pet Smart. So that's within, again, Burleson Crossing East, which is east of Lowe's. You go across, go where the apartments went up, the clear cutting. That's what now is called Sendero. Within Sendero, going back to Burleson Crossing East is Roadhouse, or I keep those straight? It's Longhorn. Texas Roadhouse is Burleson Crossing East, right?
No, Texas Roadhouse is Sendero.
Sendero. Longhorn is in, so Longhorn Steakhouse is in Burleson Crossing. The good news, we got so much we can't keep up with, so Burleson Crossing East is Longhorn Steakhouse. Going across the road, or going to the west on 71, you have Sendero, where you see all the dirt being moved on the corner of 71 and 95. You got Texas Roadhouse, you got strip centers, you got just that whole core along 71 will be commercial development. But the big grocery store is Sprouts in Burleson Crossing East.
Okay, still no word on, there's been lots of rumors about another, I don't want to say big box, but big store going up in Burleson East, so.
So EDC staff is, again, we've got some great EDC staff. They're constantly chasing properties from mom and pops to big stuff. We're doing off-site visits. We went out to the racetrack a while back to see how that growth at the drag strip, any place, how many hotel rooms they're doing. They're fixing to do a multi-entertainment complex. They realized we built a complex we're only using 4 or 5 times a year, so they're doing a little theme park out there, trying to get at a year-round venue. That's why you see all these hotels going up, because you can go from here to there quicker than you go from Austin. As we add rooftops, as we add traffic flows on 71, that'll help drive the big boxes.
And what about Chewy's? I spoke.
Chewy's is going in Burleson
I
Crossing,
heard
is
there
in
was some-
Sendero.
I heard there were some issues going on with Chewy's right now. Somebody
Not that
told
I'm
me,
aware of.
I was at a golf tournament the other day, and the general contractor for Sprouts said that Chewy's was having issues. with taxing or something. You
No,
know
I haven't
anything
heard
about it?
nothing.
Okay, well.
No issues with us, again, that we know of.
All right.
And I guess any particular requests or updates?
Is there
I'm
any
sorry,
more
go-
grocery stores coming?
Crap.
Just Sprouts right now.
Ever in conversations with Randall's or anybody?
Can we,
Sorry.
can we request to bring the rezoning of Mayfest? Like,
Yeah, whatever request you want to make, be glad to.
okay, can I request that we?
You don't mind, go ahead and read 4C updates.
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah, so, yeah, item 4C, individual request from planning and zoning commissioners, that particular items to be listed on future agendas. I'd like to request that Mayfest Park be considered for a rezoning to either nature or to park zoning.
Second.
Okay.
Do a second?
No action, just recommendations to staff.
No, okay.
Okay. Anything else?
I was told back in January they were going to put up some, I don't know, you call them barriers. You know, when you're taking the turnaround on 71 going under, and then Starbucks is on your right as you turn around and H-E-B's behind that. They were going to put in some barriers right there to keep people from stopping the flow of traffic. Because what happens, people are coming around and they just stop. And they wait till all the traffic passes, and then they cut straight across and go into H-E-B. Well, I was told we were going to put some barriers in there to stop that from happening, so they have to go down a little farther to get into H-E-B.
So of the visual, you have 71, you have the access on 71. Are you talking about Hassler where they can't turn off a Hassler or cut across Hassler?
Well, right now, you know, when you're, let's say you're coming on eastbound 71 access.
He's talking about the U-turn area on 71, on
U-turn.
TxDOT Road.
Oh, TxDOT Road, okay.
Yeah, and people, I mean, people are slamming on their brakes. It is dangerous right there. And people get so angry.
We'll check with TxDOT and try to get back with you.
But I was told in January it was going to be done in 2 weeks, and it never did get done.
Well, I know, and I can't keep my highway straight at,
So it's on the other side. It's on the westbound access road, right outside of Starbucks,
so it's
on the U-turn.
On the U-turn.
Yep.
But if you're going west, you're talking about when you come east, I know what you're talking about. When you come underneath that corner, you don't want them to cut over and try to get an H-E-B
Right,
parking lot.
because everybody thinks they just need to go straight across, and the problem is all those cars are coming by at 40 miles an hour.
Right, I'm with you now.
It's dangerous. So I just feel like they need to do something about it.
Okay, we'll get with TxDOT and see if they have any plans. Anything else?
You good? Cool. Let's move on to item 5, adjournment.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Yeah, second, cool. All in favor?
Thank you.
All opposed? Good afternoon, everyone.